Welcome to the From There to Here podcast, where we talk to people in the public eye about their journey through life, the challenges they face, the influences, and where we are looking to encourage people who are facing challenges in the mental health area to reach out and ask for help if that is appropriate at that point in their lives. My guest today is a truly remarkable person. It is Clare Milford Haven, who is the founder of the charity James's Place, which exists to provide centres to support people who have suicidal thoughts and to try and help them through that point in their lives. Clare set up this magnificent charity in response to, or as a result of, the suicide of her son. Clare, thank you so very much for joining me.
Thank you, Michael, for having me on your show. I'm very honoured to be on.
Oh, the honour is mine, believe me. Okay, so just to get to know you a little bit, first of all, tell us, if you will, where you come from, what your background is, what your sort of profession has been, and at what point you started your family.
Okay, so I am half English, half American. I was actually born in New York because my mother's American, but my parents came and lived in the UK when I was very small. So I've spent all my life here, really, except for summers in the States, and brought up in the countryside, and horses became a love of my life very early on and still are. And yes, that was my childhood, was sort of being brought up in the countryside. And my first job was at Christie's, South Kensington. I did history of art A-level and English, but history of art became a great sort of love of mine. And so my first job was as a porter in the picture department in Christie's, South Ken. And after a couple of years, I was like, actually, I'm kind of done with working in a basement. So I decided to travel with a girlfriend of mine, and we went and traveled all over Asia, Southeast Asia, which I loved. It really kind of opened up my eyes. I remember my father being so concerned, and obviously in those days we didn't have mobile phones or anything. And I was like, oh, don't worry, we'll be fine. And when I think about it now, it must have been utterly terrifying for him to see his daughter and her friend wandering off to India on their own with a backpack. But it was a sort of fascinating journey, and I ended up in the Philippines. I suddenly noticed all this amazing kind of produce that they were incredible, so handbags and hats and accessories that they were making there. So I started a business when I came back, importing hats and bags from the Philippines. Did that for a while, then had started having my family when I was very young. So I had my first child when I was 24, and that was James. And then I had two other children. And during this time, because obviously I was having children, it was difficult for me to travel and go back to the Philippines. And so I had to sort of call a halt to that business, which I had loved, but could no longer do. And I then started writing. That then sort of created my work for the next, 15, 20 years after that. I became a freelance writer. I had a job with Tatler for 8 years. And yeah, thoroughly enjoyed my writing life, my world. It fitted in well with the children. I did get divorced from my first husband, and then remarried George, who I'm with now and have been with for 28 years. And I basically stopped writing in 2006. I left my job at Tatler thinking I'd have some time to, just take some time out for a bit and enjoy life. And then in December, so 3 months later, December 2006, my eldest son died, as you know. So that turned everything completely upside down.
And we'll talk about what subsequently you have done, the amazing work that you've subsequently done. Tell us a little about James, if you will.
Yeah, so as I said, I had James when I was 24, and when I look back, it was almost like a child having a child. I was very young. I look at 24-year-olds now and I think, oh my goodness me, what was I doing? But anyway, it was what happened, and it was lovely because actually as we got older, as I got older and James got older, it just I felt we were sort of becoming more friends, than sort of the mum and son role. I felt we grew up together in many ways. James was a very spirited child. He was quite naughty. I do laugh. Sometimes people call James's place St. James's Place, and I say no. James was anything. He wasn't a saint, but he was a real character, and he was kind. He was thoughtful. I always felt he had my back, as particularly as my eldest son, and if there were difficult times, I always felt he was there for me. Very loyal. He was very popular. He was sporty. He was funny. He was bright. Yeah, James kind of had everything. Good looking, popular with the girls. And that's why it was such a huge shock when he left, because I never had a day in my life when I thought James was depressed or unhappy or confused. So it was very strange what ended up happening.
Do you know why he felt?
Yes. So James had his 21st birthday in August 2006, and we had a big party. It was great fun. I remember it was a sort of Californian. What was it? It was kind of like some Californian theme party. Everyone was in kind of surfing gear and Hawaiian shirts, and I look at the photos and I see this 21-year-old in the prime of his life, just having the best time by all accounts. But there was something that was bothering him at this stage, which he hadn't really talked to me about that much. He had something called a varicocele on one of his testicles, and he wanted to have it corrected. It bothered him. I think when he was doing rugby or riding horses, it bothered him. So I said to him, look, go and see a doctor, go and talk to a specialist about it. You're an adult, really. I mean, you decide. I can't tell you whether you should have it done or not. It's your body, so you decide, and then we'll support you. I think what I hadn't really understood, because he hadn't verbalized it, was that this was this sort of decision-making process about it, and the condition, not that he wasn't ill, it was just something that was bothering him, really, was concerning him much more than any of us realized, and he was getting quite anxious about it. He'd never had an operation before. Anyway, he had the procedure in early December 2006, and it was a very quick procedure. It was quite a minor procedure. I suggested he came home afterwards. He was studying up at Newcastle. He was studying Spanish and business, and he wanted to go back up there. He was doing an exam. He said, I'm fine, I'm going to take the train, I'll go back up and I'll see you. He was coming back down again for sort of Christmas. So I had to accept that, that's what he wanted to do. As a 21-year-old, he could kind of make his own decisions, even though I thought it might have been better for him to come home. And I just noticed when we were chatting that week, he just was quite bothered by it. He wanted it to resolve itself quickly. He was saying things like, I wonder if I can go to the gym. And I said, no, James, you've just got to take it easy for now, and then you can resume your normal life when everything's settled down. He came home a few days later, and we were chatting, we went for a long walk, we were talking, and he said, Mum, I wonder if I could have this reversed, this procedure. And I said, James, why would you want to do that? You've just got to give it time. And I said, the other thing is, I said, anesthetics can make you feel a bit odd and a bit down. You've never had one before. So you just need to give this all a bit of time. And I said, you're being a little impatient. So he went back up to Newcastle, and then he came back down a few days later. And that's when I noticed a change. He was white. He looked quite pale. He said he hadn't been sleeping well. he hadn't done the exam he'd gone back up to do. That was the first time in his life he actually had not sort of sat an exam he was due to sit. For me, there were some warning signs, but I didn't really know what the warning signs were, but there was something not right. So I rang my doctor, our family GP, and I said, look, he's not right after this operation. I don't know what's going on. He seems a bit down. He seems a bit troubled, a bit anxious. And so the doctor said, well, let's get him to see the surgeon, the consultant, and let's get him to reassure James that everything's fine. So I said, okay, a good plan. And he also said, if he gets worse, we can put him on some antidepressants, and we can, it's quite common with young men to feel like this. I felt that was all good advice. We actually could have seen the doctor the following day, the surgeon, but James said he didn't want to. He said he wanted to wait till the Monday after the weekend because we had stuff planned. So we were all planning to sort of go up to London and see this consultant on the Monday. Anyway, long story short, the following day, he took his own life. And it was 10 days after this operation. I mean, I'd been watching him like a hawk all day. Again, not really understanding what was going on, but knowing he wasn't right. And it didn't feel, I'm very sensitive and I could feel things weren't right. But because we had the appointment planned, and he had other stuff planned for the Sunday and everything, I never thought what happened would happen. You don't go there. And yeah, that was it, really.
Did he leave any kind of final communication, or?
We found some messages on his phone to his girlfriend, and they very much said that he felt he was no longer the man he used to be, and that he couldn't get over it. And then when I went up to Newcastle to take all his stuff home, which was probably one of the most unpleasant things I've ever had to do, there was a note that had been thrown away, which again talked about him not being the man he used to be and how he couldn't live with it. And that he loved us and that he felt what he was considering was cowardly. People always say, when there's a suicide, I always hear people say, oh, God, why did they do it? Or what was going on? And I mean, there's never one, I never feel there's like one explanation. It's not like, oh, well, it happened because of this, or it happened because of that. It's so complex. I feel, I know, I mean, because in a way, it was such a sort of bittersweet. In a way, it was very reassuring to find the messages and find this note, but it was just so desperately sad. And so it felt, you feel, oh, why didn't we know this, or why didn't he tell us? Yes. that he was feeling this bad, or this kind of ashamed of what had happened. I mean, he hadn't done anything wrong. It was irrational. His thinking was irrational at that moment. And if only he'd shared with us those sort of deepest, darkest thoughts. But he didn't. That was December the 15th, 2006, was the day that everything changed. Life was never the same again. And I always say to people, it was like, I feel like I was going on a journey and I haven't done a U-turn, but I've gone off in a different direction.
Claire, that's extraordinary, and thank you for sharing. What is incredible is how you have subsequently reacted to that. And in the creation of James's Place, and there are notes from your website, the organization has seen more than 3,000 suicidal men since it was set up. which is incredible. How did you turn that grief, which frankly I can barely imagine, into the force that enabled you to set up James's Place?
I think we felt that we didn't want any other family going through what we were going through. We wanted to prevent another family or going through this nightmare. It was a nightmare. It was earth-shattering. It was any kind of death like this that happens, so sudden death, unexpected death, is so shattering and so hard to understand. And we weren't prepared for it. We weren't. No, and you're never prepared to lose a child. I think we just felt we had to do something. We had to, when we then subsequently, obviously, we were sort of flooded with information, and we suddenly realized actually, if James was going to die of anything aged 21, then suicide was the most likely cause. And we had no idea. We didn't know that it was the biggest killer of men under the age of 35. And actually at that stage, his age group, so he was 21, so sort of 19 to 25-year-olds were highest risk males. Yeah. And now it's more middle-aged males. So we actually see it, James, we don't just see young men, we see men over the age of 18 and up. So we just wanted to do our level best to stem this hideous problem of suicide. And initially we started a fund, and we started fundraising, and we were funding other charities that were in this space, and we were funding research, and we were funding projects and Samaritans and Mind, and we were doing as much as we could, and we were learning. It was a real learning curve for about 10 years. But all the time we were doing this, I kept thinking, because James did look for help in Newcastle. He did. This all came out afterwards. That week post-op, he went to a walk-in centre. He told them he felt very anxious about this operation, and he actually said, I feel suicidal. But they sent him as a low priority to A&E, and that was just the wrong thing to do. Yes. He wasn't low priority. He'd said he actually felt suicidal, so he felt like taking his own life. That's high priority. He was a young man, and that was the highest risk group. I mean, everything should have, a red flag should have been coming up on the computer screen when the nurse was taking down his notes. But anyway, so his journey, that sort of hideous journey that he had, trying to seek help and not finding help, kept replaying in my mind. I kept kind of visualizing James, and he would have looked fine on the outside, because he would have looked fine on the outside, but inside he was in trauma. So I kept thinking, what kind of service, what kind of intervention might have helped James? What kind of thing would have stopped him doing this? What needs to happen? Where's the gap? And it just started to come to me that the gap actually was James's Place, was what we've created, was a sort of non-clinical space, a quiet space, a space that respected you and valued you. And you go to A&E and you just want to walk out straight away. It's a minefield in there. And he didn't need to be in A&E. He needed to be somewhere, and he needed to go and talk to someone about this. And as it was a very personal thing, and maybe, understand he probably didn't want to talk to his mum about great details. So that's I'm okay with that. But I wish there'd been someone he could have opened up to. And I know that would have saved his life, because that's what we do now, and it saves lives. And it's, men are very proud individuals. That, men don't like to open up about their personal things, their personal stuff. they're full of pride and they feel shame in a way that I don't think women do. So it's a very different, you're dealing with a very different mindset, a very different psyche. And so I wanted to create a space where men would feel comfortable coming to, and they would offload, and we would untangle that plan, and we would untangle that mess in their head that kept saying the only option is to take my own life, and actually give them back hope and give them back their sense of self and worth, and just set them on the road again. And so, yeah, this vision, this sort of project started to develop. And amazingly, that's what we've created in James's place. And it is, it's wonderful. I'm so happy we've done it. I'm so thrilled that in James's name and in his memory, we can save others. It's great.
It's remarkable, Claire. It's absolutely, I'm sure everybody listening will just be knocked over by the courage and the achievement. And you have centres in London, Newcastle and Liverpool, and are targeting a couple more by the end of next year, I believe.
Yes, so Liverpool was our first, and then London. Liverpool was 2018, London was 2022, and Newcastle was last year. And Birmingham is in our sights for this year. We're sort of and then the fifth is still slightly up in the air. But yeah, we basically want to be a national charity. We want men to be within 2 hours of a James's place so that they can get the help they need.
So for people listening, if you feel able in any way to fundraise, make a donation, that is magnificent. And of course, if you feel that you would benefit from somebody to talk to, please also go onto the website and have a look. So Claire, I mean, the lives have been saved by James's place. In effect, James has therefore saved lives in many ways. Is that a way that you look at it?
I guess I do look at it in a positive way. I think it's very important when you go through something like this, you have choices of how you're going to react, and your reaction to bad things in life is very important. So even though I think at the time when we set up this foundation in his memory, I kept thinking, I don't know if I want to think about this every day. I don't want to think about the sadness every day. I want to think about James, but I don't want to think about all the stuff, all the horrid stuff, But now I'm so pleased we did what we did, because we've been able to channel all that sort of negative, horrid stuff into something really positive. And we've been able to save, now thousands of lives in James's name. And I know that James would be, or is, right behind what we're doing. And I often meet other parents who have lost children in similar ways. And it's very hard to see when you're recently bereaved from something like this. It's very hard to see the wood for the trees. It's very hard to see how you're going to move forward. And I don't encourage them to set up charities, because it's quite a big undertaking and it's a big commitment. It's a big responsibility. I mean, we've done it and I'm thrilled, but it's a big responsibility. But I guess what I try to encourage is, trying to channel those difficult feelings into something positive, if you can, as much as you can. But it takes time. And everyone's grief journey is individual, and it's a process. And I always say, I've never got over. I mean, you don't get over it; you get on with it. It's something you just get on with it. And I'm blessed. I have other children as well who fly the James's Place flag, and
They're very actively involved.
I'm very fortunate
Yeah.
that I have other children as well. But we never stop missing him, and it feels like a part of our future has been erased.
Yes, of course.
But with James's Place, we have a different future, and that's fine. That's okay.
Well, it's extraordinary. It's magnificent. You have saved lives. What greater contribution could anybody make than that? It's absolutely extraordinary. What can we do as a society to reduce the number of men who feel that they may wish to take their own lives? How can we pick up on it? How can we recognize it among our friends? How can we be different so that this happens less often?
I think embedded in the male culture, and I think it's quite an Anglo-Saxon thing, that we tend to be very there's a sort of attitude, particularly probably, I don't know if it's very British, but there's a lot of come on, let's go and have a beer, or you'll get over it, or man up, and all this sort of nonsense. I think if we can ask people how they are, ask men how they are, and I think it was Roman Kemp who said this on something I saw. He said, ask twice. And that's really, really good. Because often you say to someone, how are you? And say, oh, I'm fine. And you go, good. And then you start talking about yourself or something. But actually ask twice and say, are you really fine? I mean, because you don't look fine, or you're being honest, or just dig a bit deeper and listen. So many people don't listen. Listen when someone tells you how they are. And be that sounding board, be that confidant. It's not a weakness for a man to access help. Mm-hmm. I actually think it's such a strength. I think that every man who's come into James's Place, and then sometimes I'll see them in the waiting room, and I just think, good on you. Honestly, that's such a strong thing to do, just to walk through the door here and admit that you've got a problem and share that problem and dissect that problem and try to resolve that problem as best you can is such a courageous thing. So I think it's about men understanding that it's not a weakness to seek help, and there is good help out there, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Actually, they should be really proud of themselves for wanting to get better and for wanting to resolve this.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. Is the situation worsening? Are more people contemplating suicide as a solution to the way that they are feeling? Is that more prevalent, do you sense?
The figures for 2022, it was higher than before, which is not good for England. Men are 3 times more likely to take their own lives than women. So, yeah, the figures are high. I think lockdown and the pandemic didn't help, because a lot of problems start at home, and you couldn't leave home, and we were all stuck in our bubble. But if that bubble wasn't a happy bubble, then that would have been really hard. And I think a lot of people's lives were changed during that time. There's a lot of shift. So it could be some fallout from that. But I think there is more. I think people talk about it more now. And talking about suicide doesn't mean that it's going to sort of catch on. I think there's always this myth that if you ask somebody if they feel suicidal, that it's going to put the idea into their head. It's actually not. They'd probably be so relieved that you've spotted it.
Yes.
So I think we have to shake off those beliefs and try to push the stigma down of this problem, because it has always been historically shrouded in taboo and stigma. And I think by talking about it, that reduces that, which is good, and hopefully gets more men the help they need. I think one of the other things that could affect those figures is that, so coroners are very obviously responsible for reporting the inquests, and I think that maybe coroners are, in the past, again, I think coroners would try and save families where suicide was very taboo in their culture. I think that is changing. Yes. And I think coroners now have a duty to, their verdicts have to be more true, perhaps. So that could also be affecting the numbers.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I personally think that we have yet to feel the true effect of the damage that lockdown did. That's not, I take no view on whether or not we should have locked down from a public health point of view, but I think for many people it was a devastating experience, being alone with your own thoughts, or being in an unhappy situation with your own thoughts, and an unhappy relationship, family situation, domestic violence. All of these things just came far more to the fore during lockdown, and to be 16 and spend your 12 months of your life sort of locked away is incomprehensible to those of us who are not 16. It's
sure.
I always think that the thing to remember for young people is how slowly time seems to move. So you or I might think 3 months in a job that we didn't like would be better than quitting on day one, because that's smart, whereas 3 months to a 16-year-old sounds like a death sentence.
Yeah, it's true. I think it was really tough for young people. I remember thinking at the time that actually young people, because they're so plugged into their social media, and I remember thinking, well, they're going to have all these methods of communication that we never had when we were in our teens. And I kept thinking, well, they're probably fine. But what I hadn't really factored in was how much that kind of face-to-face communication matters to teenagers. It's not just communicating on your mobile. It's that physical communication, which really matters, which was quite eye-opening to me, actually. I thought in these days it wouldn't matter so much, but it does. Thank God.
Yeah, no, well, indeed, absolutely. So obviously, if anybody is feeling that they would like somebody to talk to about their feelings, I'm sure you would encourage them to reach out to a James's Place, and I'm sure they would be very welcome and would receive help and support that they need.
Yeah, 100%. So we have, it's a very straightforward referral system. So either you can be referred, men can be referred to us at James's Place either via A&E or their GP or a member of the family, or they can self-refer. Yes. And there's a form on our website that you can fill out, and it's very straightforward. And then we will come back to the individual we always see people within 48 hours. Yes. So there are no waiting lists. And I think that was one of the criteria that I felt so strongly about, was I think when you're in this state, in a suicidal state, the urgency to see someone is so acute. And unfortunately, the waiting lists in the NHS are very, very long. So it was about, right, we'll see you straight away. We'll see you as soon as we can. And then either you're right for us or we're right for you, or not. And that decision is made in the first assessment. I would say to any man out there that if you are feeling in this state, please do reach out. Please do get the help you need, because the other alternative will have a devastating effect on your family and on your friends. And it's always important to remember how much you are loved and how much you are cherished, and that every individual holds a place on this planet, and it's important to remember that value.
You say on your website that an average suicide affects 135 people in terms of the devastation for people who care and people who love and so on.
Yes, it's the ripple effect. I think, obviously you've got your immediate family and friends, and then it's your colleagues, and then it's your, schoolmates, and then it has a really, really devastating effect on your community. And honestly, the men that I've met who've been through James's Place, and to see how kind of, it's almost like it literally gives them a new lease of life. The relief that they feel once they've unburdened themselves, once they've managed to talk through a problem that they feel is unsolvable. But we can solve in life. We can solve every problem we can. Yes. And I think it's so important to sort of attempt that process or go down that process, because it's so, like I said, it's so lovely to meet these guys and just see the relief and happiness. It's like this new lease of life. It's wonderful.
Which is extraordinary. So obviously we're encouraging people to reach out to you. We're encouraging people to reach out to their friends. We're encouraging people to take a look at their friends. And what you said earlier about the how are you is not a routine standard introduction. It is a serious question that might well have the answer. I'm not great today, and please try and help. What can people do who would like to help you fundraise or would like to contribute to the establishment of the Birmingham Centre and wherever the next one is to be, and to allow you to continue to do this magnificent work? What are the kind of things that people are doing?
Oh goodness, we've had so many amazing people do extraordinary things. We had one guy recently ran, I think it was 90 marathons in 90 days. I'm not suggesting that's for everyone, but unbelievable. My daughter's running the London Marathon this year. My other son rode across the Atlantic, which was hideous for me, but he did brilliantly with 3 other friends. So
rode across the Atlantic.
Rode across the Atlantic in a very small boat.
Wow.
With 3 friends, and they were all quite big and tall, and I literally I said, you actually cannot do this to me. But they did it, and it was extraordinary, and they broke the record for fundraising of that particular challenge, which was fantastic. So you can do that, you can do anything. You can climb mountains, it doesn't have to be a physical. We've got someone swimming the channel coming up. Anything you want to do. We are so great. We are totally reliant on independent fundraising. So that's how we survive. That's how we save lives. So yes, if there's anybody out there who's looking for a challenge, please get in touch with us. We will help you. We will support you through that challenge. And the funds that you raise keep us going and would really help with the Birmingham Centre, which we're planning to open this year.
Fantastic. Please do go to the website and see if there is anything you can do. Even the smallest donation is very gratefully received and will be put to very effective use. We understand that not everyone can sail across the Atlantic. Any contribution will be used to help save lives. Please help if you can. Clare, thank you very much. I have found this very moving and inspiring. I hope you get told every day how wonderful the work you do is, and I hope you understand how great you are to turn that life experience, horrible as it was, into something that is saving lives. You are magnificent. I hope you know that.
Oh, well, it's not just me. I mean, that's so kind of you. I am blessed to have an incredible team at James's Place. They are all, right from the senior management team down to our communications, down to the therapists. The therapists do the most extraordinary job, and day in, day out. And so even though this started as and our trustees are incredible as well. Even though this started as something in my heart and something in my head, which I never really worked out how I was going to make it work. But I couldn't have done it without the help and support of so many different people. So yes, it perhaps was something I thought about and created, but it's been carried on and made to happen. And goodness, the day-to-day work is done by many other people. So thank you for your kind words, but I have to share those. I have to share those with the team as well, because they're amazing.
Of course, absolutely. Okay, well, look, thank you very much for joining us today, Claire, on From There to Here. It's been a privilege to speak to you. And yeah, as just to repeat one more time, please go onto the James's Place website, either if you need help or if you think you can help. And yeah, be nice to each other. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michael.